How's it going, Ding Dongs? Welcome to another episode of Ding Dong Drift. Today I'll be installing this little sensor right here. This one little sensor could save my engine from catastrophic failure like I did last year. So let me show you how I'm going to install this. Before we get started, got a little update on the wide body. Obviously, I'm printing my own wide body. If you haven't seen it already, check it out. So I have one piece printed, starting to print the front fender for the driver's side now, but that's not what I want to tell you. If you go on my website, Strudermade, I have a file that you can download, that you can purchase. You can 3D print your own wide body. It's very similar to this one. It's slightly less wide. This one is like 150 millimeters in the rear and like 100 something in the front. The one I'm selling is 100 in the rear and 60 in the front. And it looks very similar to this. The only thing missing is the vent, and that's kind of it, and it's just narrower. So go check that out. You can 3D print your own wide body. It fits on almost any 3D printer, like Ender 3. You can buy the file, 3D printer, filament, and you have a whole wide body that you can put on your car by yourself. I think it's pretty awesome. So go check that out on the website. So as you can see, I already got a mess going. This is my wire shop engine harness. Obviously I have it pulled out. I have it disconnected from the ECU. I have it pulled into the engine bay here so I don't have to be crouched over in the passenger side and the footwell over there. But you can see I have all the tape taken off. I have the shielding pushed back, and I am now taking this wire, which is the oil pressure switch light that I've been using as a analog oil pressure. So wires right here. So this wire used to be down there, and obviously I pulled it out from under the intake. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna attach two of those wires. Those are brand new Tefsel wires. I'm gonna attach two of them and run them through that shielding and all the way to the ECU plug, because those need to go into the AN Volt 2. The reason I need two wires, not one, is because this is an oil pressure and oil temperature combo sensor. I got a little adapter. The sensor's M10, and my port there is 1/8 inch NPT. Let's get these wires run through. I'm gonna have to splice in 5 volts from some of the other sensors. So I'm thinking I'm gonna take 5 volts from the TPS, because that's literally the only other 5 volt sensor here, I think. I'm pretty sure that's the only one, because you see it's got the pink wire. And if we look here, my pink wire right there goes to 5 volts. So pink wire is 5 volts, and I'm pretty sure it's the same color everywhere. So if you look here, these are my ignition and injection wires, and if we follow them, you can see they're spliced together because obviously it's a V8, but this only has 4 drivers for injection and ignition. However, when I upgrade the ECU, I literally just cut these splices, extend the wires to the plug, and boom, I have sequential injection and ignition. I'm happy I tore this apart because it's awesome to see how easy it is gonna be to upgrade the ECU in the future. So shout out to Rob at my wire shop. His engine harnesses are freaking awesome. I'm so happy with this. So I'm running into a bit of an issue. There's this big joint here, splits the whole loom. I mean, the whole loom comes together in that spot right there. It's obviously pretty tight because there's like 100 wires in there. And there's a nice piece of heat shrink on it, and I don't wanna cut that piece of heat shrink, but I think I'm gonna have to because it's stuck there and it's not moving. So I think I'm gonna just cut the heat shrink, and then the heat shrink should be big enough that I can put a new one on there. I have some heat shrink that's pretty big. It's meant for like batteries. It's so nice. It looks so nice in there, and I didn't want to cut it, but I'm gonna have to. Oh yeah, there we go. So I cut tape, I cut the heat shrink Rob, if you're watching, I'm so sorry. All right, next step. So you see I have the TPS disconnected right here so I could have a little bit more slack. This is the TPS wire right here. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna cut the shielding right here and splice 2 more wires, 5-volt power and the sensor ground. I can't film any of this because you can't see anything in there because I can barely see anything in there, so I'll just update when I have the wires run or spliced. All right, here's the wires. Got the shielding all cut. I tried to strip the wires, just the shielding back, and then try to crimp it on, but I kind of cut through the wires, so then I just said, fuck it. All right, there we go. As you can see over there, we got 4 wires, power, ground, the 2 signals, and then this is that loom over there. See that when I move it? And I got the 2 wires poked out, and then got a heat shrink on here. There's the power and ground coming from the ECU, if it would focus, and got those spliced in. So now all I gotta do is slide those over, and this is like marine grade heat shrink that has like glue inside, and it becomes really nice and stiff so that these joints don't bend, so we don't have any issues with wires breaking or anything. So that's all done. This is the heat shrink I was talking about. Look at the size of this shit. You can put your hold. All right, you saw me wire this guy up, figured out how to make this plug. I've never made a Bosch plug like this before. Basically, the gist of it is this little blue thing, you push it up and you can push the pins in, and then you push it down to lock the pins so they don't come out. So it's not like little clips on like Deutsch connectors that you need to, you know, use like a little pin tool to unpin. It's a little slidey clip thing. So now what I'm doing is installing a pull-up resistor. So this is a spare 5-volt wire that Rob has installed. You see the main 5-volt wire is this pink one right here. So somewhere in here, it splits off. It comes back forward this way so you can add other sensors or something. A pull-up resistor basically takes 5 volts through a 1 kilo ohm resistor, converts, I don't know exactly how it works, but I think the temperature sensor that's in there outputs like a 3-volt signal. So you need to add a couple volts to it, I think. So my 2 temperature pins, see, temp 1 is coolant and temp 2 is intake air temperature. So there's 1 and there's 2. So my 2 temperature pins are taken already. So what I have to use is use my analog voltage ones. So if we look here, my analog voltage 1 is my TPS, and my analog voltage 4 is my lambda, which is my wideband. But I still have 2 and 3. 2 is gonna be my oil temperature, and 3 is gonna be my oil pressure. Pressure does not need to have a pull-up resistor added, but temperature does. The last thing I'm gonna do now is I'm putting this heat shrink on it, and then I'm gonna put 1 more heat shrink over all of this, so this resistor, because these little tiny legs on the resistor, I don't wanna break them. Pull the shielding back on the wires, and then wrap the legs of the resistor around it, and crimped on those little gold crimps. I hope this works because I've never done this. This is fun. I like wiring. I like wiring when you have a nice new harness. So shout out to my wire shop once again for an awesome engine harness. Got everything finished up, pull-up resistor in here, and I got the 2 new wires pinned into the ECU. This plug, the way you pin it, or the way you insert pins, is you push this pin down and it unlocks the whole plug. Be careful you don't pull any wires out. And then you push your pins in, and then you push these back up and it locks the pins in place. Sorry if you can hear all that noise of cutting trees down or something in my neighborhood. But I got everything working. You can see we have oil pressure is 0, but look, if I put this little thingy in my mouth.
That's what he said, right, guys, because of gay?
And blow on it real hard.
Why are you gay?
Like really, really hard. You saw that? It goes up. And then oil temperature as well. See if I hold it. It's going up. Hell yeah. All right. Sorry I didn't film this, but as you can see, I got the whole dash. Everything added. So I got oil temperature and coolant at the top, got oil pressure and wideband at the bottom, and then those are still the same. Let's see if it works and make sure we don't have any leaks. It's good that the coolant and oil temperature are the same because the car hasn't run yet. So let's see what happens. Why did I just happen? All right, so the issue was I had this like shitty battery terminal on the ground, and it was so old and corroded that it wouldn't even crank. So got that fixed. I'm gonna start the car. We're gonna see what happens. There we go. We got good oil pressure. So now we can watch the coolant and oil temp. So oil should obviously heat up slower because it's thicker. So now I can mess with the scales here. See how, like Lambda, yeah, it's rich right now, which is fine. But this one needs to go like up here. So I need to change the ranges for that. Just super easy to do. Just go into edit. And then we're gonna do oil pressure bar, input in values. Lambda. Oh, that should work. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. But yeah, look. Oil pressure's good. No leaks. Everything's dry. Yeah, everything's perfectly dry. That's freaking legit. So I just realized I didn't show actually how I set up the oil sensors and all that stuff, and how I set up the engine protection. So let's start with the oil sensors. Analog input, oil pressure. That opens this menu here. You just pick which input you put your wire in. So I have analog volt 3 for my oil pressure. It's a Bosch 10 bar. It's got the part number right there. So there's all these sensors in here that are built in. Pressure's done, that works. Oil temperature, and I'm using analog volt 2. Now this is where the resistor that I added comes in. So you see external pull-up resistor. Because I'm using temperature, Link software already knows that I need a pull-up resistor because temperature sensors use resistance instead of an actual voltage they put out. That's why you need the pull-up resistor. You're basically adding 5 volts to the resistance that sensor is putting out. So the sensor is putting out, you know, resistance, and at very cold temperatures it's high resistance, and at very hot temperatures it's low resistance. And if you combine that with the 5 volts coming off of the resistor that I added, then you can, you know, base that off of it. So it's just a standard Bosch NTC. I put a 1K resistor on there. That's why the resistor doesn't really matter, because you can go in here and you can choose what resistance you want to use. And yeah, I put in some crazy value for error. So if I ever see negative 42 on my oil temperature, that means my sensor has failed. For the engine protection for oil pressure, we go to engine protection and GP RPM limit 1, and then we choose ignition cut. You can do fuel cut if you want, but I think ignition cut works better because you can just keep dumping fuel and not, you know, lean the engine out. And then we have the startup lockout. So this is like when you're starting the engine, you know, it's building oil pressure. I mean, mine builds oil pressure like instantly. And then the activation delay is like, say, you know, you hit 20 PSI for some weird reason. it doesn't just instantly cut power, it will wait 3 seconds. We go to GP RPM limit table 1, and this is where you set up all your RPMs. So I just realized I actually have to raise these because my car doesn't even idle at 500. I have to raise these to 1,000. This is very simple. So at 0 oil pressure and at 0 RPM, the ECU will allow 1,000 RPM. And at 1,000 RPM at 0, it will, so like basically if your engine's failed, it will still allow you to rev it to 3,000. So you can break your engine more, but it won't let you go above that. So that's how this works. At 5 PSI oil pressure, it won't let you go above 4,000 either. At 15, you can rev to 1,500, you know, because then you could see maybe at high RPMs, you're getting oil pressure. And then at 40 PSI, which is kind of decent oil pressure for a 1UZ, it'll let you rev to infinity. So you don't want the oil pressure limit to affect your other limits. So like my engine has, you know, its actual RPM limit, which is here. This is my actual RPM limit. You have coolant temperature, and as the temperature rises, it will let you rev to a higher RPM. So mine's at 7,000 right now. I used to rev to 7,500, but it gets scary up there. I don't know. So yeah, that's how you set up the engine protection. It's pretty simple. That's gonna be it for this video, ding dongs. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this was informative to some of you. Make sure you check out Strudermate for that 3D file of the wide body for those of you that have 3D printers, or maybe you got a friend with a 3D printer. He can print your wide body for you. Video on that is coming soon on how I'm doing my wide body. Also, I've redesigned the cup holders completely. I don't know if you can see, but the bottom of the cup holder is now glossy. You could have any of these finishes on the bottom and the top. So we got carbon here, we got glossy here, you see that, totally glossy. Got chopped carbon or forged carbon, whatever you want to call it. And we got new finishes. We got the Sad Boy Special. Make sure you check those out. Lots of customization now. Make sure you check out Strudermate in the description. Anything you buy off of there goes straight into the car and to make more content, better content, and so on. So thank you guys for all the support. I'll see you guys next week. Peace out, ding dong, stay sweet.
Do you have your passport?